Now we're going to create a warm and cool gradient as a reference tool for painting. Let's get out all of our favorite tools. Got my palette knife. I've got my largest number 10 flat paintbrush. Our usual paints here, alizarin crimson. Yours is viridian green, titanium white. Got some water here to clean my brushes and to mix with. And we can reuse some of our stuff. I'm using the back of our very first painting project. So we're going to build two gradients. I'm going to go ahead and divide. Let's divide our page in half. One half will be warm, and the other half will be cool. So remember that there are two different ways to think about warm and cool colors. The first is to divide the color wheel in half completely. The second way we talked about warm and cool colors had to do with individual colors being either warm or cool. What we're going to focus on now is that second idea. We're going to go back to making the same gray that we've made for the last 2 weeks, but we're going to create warm and cool versions of that gray. So let's go ahead and get some of your paint set up on your easel. We'll start with warm first. We may need to do a second round to do the cool. Let's see how far we get. Bit of green and a little bit of red. Okay. I'm just going to take a small amount of my alizarin crimson and put it over here. Excellent. And I'm going to do an equal amount of my green. We've done this mixture a few times, so you kind of know what to expect. Before we get too far into this, let's do the same thing that we've done before. We try to figure out how to get right in between these two colors. So this looks a little green. That usually happens to me. Let's mix in some more red. Still looks green. Let's add a little more red. Oh, I went too far in the red. Let's bring a little bit of green back in. Tiny bit more. This is a good lesson to just add tiny amounts, mix it up, see what you get. Add water as you go, in case your paints are starting to dry out. I know during the summer months, my paints dry out really fast. Add a little water in there. Okay, wow, look at that color. It's like almost perfectly in between red and green. It doesn't appear to have much tint of either. Look how it's just like a black, you know, and that looks like gray. Really neutral. So not leaning one way or the other. Great. That's an excellent way to start. Okay. I'm going to take my brush, and I want you to follow along with me when we do this. But let's take a little bit of this beautiful black we've made, and we're just going to kind of document what we have. So I'm going to put a swatch. It's what we call just a small piece of paint, a small brush stroke like that we're keeping track of. We call it a swatch. So I'm going to put a small swatch of that black down there, because that's really like exactly in the middle. Love that. Clean out your brush. Always, always clean out our brushes. Now it's time to mix up our cool gradient. Same process as before. Let's try to get to this really neutral black. Add a little water. It's very warm in my studio, so it's starting to, the paint's going to dry out really fast. I see a little green tint in there. Let's just go through the process. We are going to push this towards green, but I think it's a really smart idea that we push this initial mixture to this neutral black. Again, this is all about practice and being able to see the differences. It's one thing to have me tell you and walk you through it, but the goal is to get you to the point where you can do these on your own. All right, that feels really nice and neutral now. That's great. So let's take a little bit of green. I'm going to do just this much green. Add it in. And remember, green is a cool color. On the cool side of the color wheel. Be a little bit more. Yeah, that looks good. It's still very dark. It's much more in the neighborhood of a neutral, more towards a black or dark gray, but it's definitely got those green edges showing through. So this is a great one. Let's start with that. Don't forget to clean off your palette knife, just like you clean your brush. Put a little water on there. And on our cool side, let's make our first dark, cool black. Okay. Now, I guess, you know what? Since we tried to mix and apply paint directly onto the canvas, and that is much more difficult, let's mix out our whole gradient here. That's just a much more efficient way to do it, but it's not the only way. So I'm going to take most of that black. I'll leave just a tiny bit. I'm going to do that because this is the process you're going to use, so that you have enough to lay down your black there. Let's bring in some white. Not too much. You don't want to get too light too quickly, then you need to start over. Okay. We want to be able to compare, so let's keep going. I'm going to pull off probably 2/3 of that here. Add a little bit more white. A little bit more. Okay, let's pull 2/3 out here. I think we'll go for a 5-part again. If it turns into a 6 like that, that's fine. We're gonna stay flexible about that kind of stuff. Okay, let's do one more. And then we can really start to fine tune and adjust all the steps in between. That feels a little dark to me. So let's pull some of that out of the way. Remember, if you have a lot, you have to mix a lot of white with it. So let's pull that out, leave a little, and then I don't need as much white to make it lighter. That's better. That feels more like this value to me. Maybe it's a little darker than that, but it's closer. We could go even lighter. All right, that looks great. So this is both ends of our spectrum, and clearly these are too dark. So let's drag a little bit of this lightest back into our, we could call this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We'll drag a little bit of 1 into 2. Can take a little bit of 1 and put it into 3. What's that looking? Let's really get that out of the way. I don't want to get too confused by that extra bit there. So we're just looking at these. Okay, I'm examining these a little bit more. I feel like the jump between these two is a little too big. So let's bring some of this lighter warm gray into here. We're gonna call these grays for now. It's just a way to frame what we're doing so you can still see the values. Not light enough. Let's add a little bit more. That looks good. Okay, now I think this one needs a little bit more. I have some left on my knife, so let's just mix that in and see how it goes. That looks much better. This feels just a little dark now. Okay, I think that's going to be fine. Let's lay out these swatches and see how they look on our canvas paper. Remember to scoop all your paint back into little hills. Less surface area means they won't dry as quickly. Okay, brush. If you haven't painted your darkest swatch yet, go ahead and do that. Rinse your brush. Let's do our next darkest. I think we called that a 4. You gotta rinse between each one of these. Otherwise the paint will mix together and it'll change your values. Now 3. And 2. And our 1. Okay, that looks pretty good. Some glare on that last one. So it looks lighter than it is. But from my angle, I can tell it looks good. Okay.